So in this first video, we are going to create one application, and this application is going to be used as a base for all the tutorials from the other videos. So as you can see here, I already downloaded the SDK from BMC, the 2105, which is called 10.1, and I extracted it inside the folder, and I actually prepared everything. So there is a page on the doc wiki from BMC that is very well done. So you should go there and it will tell you which version of NodeJs you need to download, which version of Maven you need to download, which version of Java OpenJDK you need to download. So everything has already been done. I already installed the SDK, so I will not do a video about it because I mean it's pretty straightforward. And Yarn, you need Yarn as well. So what I'm going to do is just show you how to create an application, because that's also one of the differences between the old SDK and the SDK that will come post 2105 is before you had the option with two Maven archetypes. So you could create, for example, an application and a library. So the difference between an application and a library is you can launch an application in Innovation Studio. So for example, if I go here, you can see here that this one is an application, and this application I can visit it, so that means I can launch it. So for example, it could be a pizza application, and so the end user could order a pizza, for example. A library is a bit different. The library will not be able, doesn't have like a runtime side. So you can still create views, for example, but you cannot launch this application. It's like a really like a library like you have, for example, in Linux or Windows with a DLL. So it usually contains business logic or elements that will be consumed by other applications. So for example, you could have like your pizza application relying on some business logic that would be inside like pizza library, like in the processes. Or for example, if you have like a library which is dedicated to notification, with some processes to send text messages using a third-party provider like Twilio, you could so it could be like a utility library, and this utility library can be consumed by, for example, your pizza application or another application like a daily application. So I mean, a library is more like reusable. So in the previous SDK we had two archetypes, two Maven archetypes, one to create an application, one to create a library. So an archetype, Maven archetype, is like basically a template. So it will prepare like a set of files depending on if you wanted to create an application or a library. With the new SDK, we don't have that anymore. We just have one. So it's called applications. I'm going to copy the command line. And as you can see here, we are using Maven archetype generate, and we are using Eric SDK archetype application. So it just has one. But when you launch this command line, it will ask you, like before, for different information. So be sure to check that it's using the 10.1.0, which is 2105. So of course, if you're seeing this video and we are in 2108, for example, I mean, it would be maybe a different version. So just check that the archetype that is used is the one matching the SDK. So in my case, it's the right version. So the group ID is usually your company name. That was a developer ID. So in my case, I just want to do an example. So I'm going to use com example. The artifact ID is the name of your application, the short name. So it must only alphanumeric information and without like special character like spaces and these kind of things. So I'm just going to call that sample app. Version I'm going to leave by default. Package is usually its group ID. So I just type enter. Here it's asking me if I want to create an application or a library. So if I enter true, that means I want an application. If I say false, it's going to create a library template. So you have the both archetypes into one now. So I want to create an application. Here is a friendly name that you will see in Innovation Studio, like test 2105, which is actually, so the artifact ID is test 2105, and the friendly name is test space 2105. So here I'm going to call it sample application. Skip UI code generation means, for example, let's say that you want to create a library that has only Java code. So in order to build your code faster, you might want to just say skip UI code generation to true. And in this case, everything that is UI code in this application library will not be generated. So of course, when you're going to build, it's going to be much faster. But in my case, I want to have both Java and Angular code, so I say false. I don't want to skip UI code generation. So now I review, everything seems fine. Say yes, and here it's done. So now if I go in a folder, I can see that I have my file structure. So I'm going to open this project inside WebStorm. So I have a skeleton of applications. I have a web apps folder that will contain the JavaScript code, the Java that will contain the Java code. Everything is here by default. So I need to change a couple of things because I want to build this application. So in order to build this application, we need to do Maven Key Install. But before doing that, one step that is very important is we need to tell the system what is the path to the SDK. So the path to the SDK would be SDK com BMC Resources 10.10. So this is the path we want. So what we need to do is set error. So here I'm going to switch to command line because WebStorm switched to PowerShell by default and I don't want that. Set rx SDK home equal the path to the SDK. That is very important because some files are inside the SDK and needed for the build to work. So here I am in the right path. I am in the source folder, so I'm here at the sample app level. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a Maven Key Install. But just before doing that, I'm going to cheat a bit because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a GitHub repo. And I have my gitignore file that is pretty standard, but I have some exclusion because I don't want some node modules, for example, copied to my GitHub repo. So I'm going to, before doing the build, I'm going to try to add everything to my repo. So you can see what kind of files are generated at each step. So let's see, GitHub. Oh yeah, git init. And I need to prepare a GitHub repo, so I will be back in a second. Okay, so I prepared the video. I prepared the GitHub repo, and I'm going to use this one. So git remote origin git commit and push remote. Okay, let's check that everything is inside. Okay, everything is inside of here. So my first commit is done. So now I'll just check that the path to the SDK is correct. Yes, so now we can do the first build. And we will see the difference. So I will pause the video because the build is going to take maybe a couple of minutes. and once the build is finished, I will resume the video. Okay, so the build is done, and as you can see, everything went fine. So let's see what are the new files that have been created. So for that, that's why initialized with a Git repo, so you can see everything that has been created. So there should be a lot of files. But so let's go in the bundle folder. I'm going to ignore some folders right off the bat. So I'm going to ignore this is fine. So those folders, you can see that we have a lot of new different folders. In web app, we didn't have anything inside of it. And now we have an apps folder, libs folder, resources, scripts, styles, and tools. So basically everything that is app, resources, scripts, styles, and tool, you can ignore. That is from us. That is from BMC. So I'm going to exclude them from search. When I say exclude, it's just in WebStorm, it's going to exclude it from search. So when I search something, it's going to look inside those folders by default. But thanks to the git ignore, everything that are in this folder is not in the list of new files. So what is very important is it created a libs folder, and in this libs folder we have the code for Angular. So if you are familiar with NX, you will recognize the structure. So technically you could have multiple libraries for monorepo, but we are going to have only one, what they call a library, inside one application, one bundle. So for example, one Innovation Studio application or one Innovation Studio library, we will have just one NX library. So in a lot of my documentation, when I say library, it's just the library which is inside the libs folder. So here you can see that we created some layout for you. So you have an actions folder where you will have your custom actions. Sorry about that. So here you have an actions folder where you will have your actions. You have a view components folder where you will have your view components. Styles, it will be here for your global styles. Assets will contain, for example, pictures, fonts, custom JavaScript file, custom CSS files. They will see how to load them dynamically. And this is just for localization, to localize your messages. So here we created our first application. So here we are on everything is ready. So I'm just going to put everything here so I can raise a commit and push it later. But what we want to do is, of course, deploy your application in Innovation Studio. So in the main POM file, you can see that you have your developer username, developer password, and the web URL. The web URL is the URL to your Innovation Studio server. So in my case, it is a local instance. So I'm going to go over here with this IP address, and the password should be password. Let's see, so everything should be okay. If you are curious, this is a new setting compared to the old SDK, which is the overlay mode. So it tells where you want to deploy your application, in which overlay. And 0 is pretty much only for BMC, so it's like the base mode. And 1 is usually for application from, developers like you and I. So usually overlay mode 1 is perfectly fine. So here we have our bundle is application to true, which we used when we created the application. So it says that it's an application. It would be false if it was a library. and some other information. And here, for example, you can see the RX SDK version, so it's 10.1, so 2105. When you're going to upgrade, for example, to 2108, you might have to go here and change some information, but I mean, we are not here. You can see also that compared to the older version of SDK, we don't have some automation folders anymore, automation project. We just have basically the bundle. So now that we have everything ready, we can just go here and we do Maven Key Install -p deploy. So it's going to rebuild everything again. It should be much faster this time, and it's going to deploy inside Innovation Studio. So like last time, I'm going to pause the video and I will be back after. Okay, so as you can see here, the build and the deployment is successful. So I messed up the login and password, so if you want to look at it, it's actually the demo account, and the password is like this on my local environment. So let's go to Innovation Studio. Okay, so now you can see that I have my sample application that has been deployed. So now, of course, everything is empty. So once my application has been deployed the first time, I need to, before each new deployment, I need to save whatever I've done, for example, in Innovation Studio. So let's say that I'm going to create a view in Innovation Studio. I'm going to call it test. Actually, my first view. I'm going to put some text. So if I just do another Maven Key Install deploy, I'm going to overwrite whatever is inside Innovation Studio by the version that I have locally. So before doing that, I need to get whatever is codeless in Innovation Studio locally before deploying it again. So for that, I'm going to use the same command line, but I'm going to use -p export first. So what it's going to do is it's going to download whatever has been done on Innovation Studio site, so the views, the processes, and everything. And then it's going to be part of the build and going to be deployed again in Innovation Studio. So I'm going to launch a command line, same thing, I'm going to pause it, and we are going to see what's happening. Okay, so we can see here that the build was successful. We authenticated demo and we exported the information, and then we deploy it again. So what happened is now if you go in the package folder, in main, source, main definition, you can see that we have now more information. So we have some records, but now the very important thing is we have our view. So whatever has been done in Innovation Studio is now done locally. So here, this is our first view with our text. And so we need to put that inside Github. So what we are going to do is we are not going to ignore it anymore. We are just going to ignore the target folder, because the target folder is the one generated by Maven. So you can see here the bundle. So if you want, for example, to give your application to your customer or another developer and you don't want to give the source code, you have to give this bundle, which is a zip file. Come example sample app snapshot, which is in package target folder. So this is a very first application, and you can see here that our view is still here, everything is still working. We are going to set actually as home page the view that we created, and we are going to launch the application, and here we are. So we created one view, and this one view is used on our home page. So we created an application, we created the first view, we saw how to deploy this application, how to export the definitions from Innovation Studio locally, And in the next videos, we are going to see how to create custom elements like an action, a view component, and a view component record field.